Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the live stream. So, in today's live stream, I guess I haven't seen Tony come in yet. So, we're just going to start and see if he joins in later on today. So, in other words, we're going to go ahead and see if, well, we'll have an open live stream today, if anything. So, if you would like to come into the live stream briefly, let me know and I will send you the link to your email since the majority of the people who join, I have your email on file. But in the meantime, how's everyone doing? How's everyone's gardening so far in the summer heat? So let's go ahead and do. Okay, so I see I was speaking to Jay, my good friend Jay, and they mentioned that they wanted to join in. So let's go ahead and welcome Jay.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Jay. How are you?
Fantastic.
It was awesome to see you join on. I barely see you on a live stream.
Well, I am actually a guest occasionally on The Urban Gardener, and I may again this weekend. But basically, I fill in a spot when something happens to the calendar that's a little unexpected.
Alrighty. So let's go ahead and see. All right. So yeah. So we'll wait until Tony comes in. Hopefully he comes in later on today. Um,
Yep,
and yeah, we'll figure that out. So how are you?
fantastic. It's actually a gorgeous gardening day. I did a little bit before I came here. I look at these live streams as an opportunity for a little bit of a break, a little breath, and then back to more gardening duties.
That is totally how we do it. So let's go ahead and take some time to welcome some people into the live stream. We have David over from the Bowtie Garden Life, great friend of mine, awesome gardener. Check out his channel if you haven't checked it out already. We also have Shawnee Grows as well. I've been joining her live streams as well, so go check out her live streams. Whenever she does them, I really love them. So as you saw by the title, today we were supposed to be talking about growing potatoes. So we'll briefly talk about that.
Sure.
Um, and yeah, so have you grown potatoes before?
Absolutely, grow them every year. Yes.
That's awesome. What's your experience with it? What have you had successes? Have you had failures? Go ahead and briefly talk to us about it.
Well, our original plan was a guest who is a genius about potatoes compared to me. So, if he manages to join us a little bit later, fantastic. We'll get a real expert in here. Whereas I'm a little bit more of your average person, your regular gardener, your amateur about potatoes. And I have a very casual approach about potatoes, except that ethnically I'm actually Irish, like my background is Irish. And so potatoes are a mainstay of our tradition in our diet. So it's mandatory in my garden to have potatoes, more or less.
Yes. So for me, growing potatoes here in South Florida is a little bit more complicated than
Yes.
anything else. Um, so what I would have to say is I've grown potatoes multiple times. I've grown them from the grocery store. I've grown seed potatoes as well. And I found myself having the most success with seed potatoes, mainly.
Oh, wow.
Although you could grow potatoes with any type. I've seen people done it successfully with grocery store potatoes, as the majority of us usually save the seed like a potato from our previous harvest to grow them on and on and on. But the time I've grown them during the winter or fall. I've grown them fall and winter as our summers are too deadly for them to grow. And so I have to grow them in our winter seasons. And when it comes down to my winter seasons, I really have to pick and choose what plants I want to grow, which ones are my favorite. If there's a favorite or an experiment I want to try out because I have very limited growing space. I don't have a lot of space where I can grow everything. So I have to pick and choose what I have to grow, in other words. So how about you? What have you seen the most success in seed potatoes?
Well, I just want to point out something else. I'm going to talk about my experience with potatoes, but just in case Tony is unable to join us for some reason, I've just taken a very quick look in the chat, and I see that Bow Tie Life in the Garden, which is Dave. He's actually willing to talk about his experience with potatoes as well, and he's looking for the link to join us. So I'm just letting you know that our potato discussion could be fuller if you would like that opportunity. So
Let me send the link over to him. So then we can have 3 people on the chat. We love that.
Well, I'm just letting you know that there's another opportunity to kind of make this a fuller experience. I can't follow the chat entirely when I'm, a guest, but I did notice that. I live, just for people to know, my experience isn't necessarily your experience. As we just discussed, Emmanuel is down in Florida. David, who may be joining us, is also in Florida, but in a different place and a different experience in terms of his growing. But he's been actually successful in his own way with potatoes. I am actually up in Canada. I am in Midwestern Ontario, which is kind of centralish Canada, near the lakes, near the Great Lakes. And I'm actually... you might say I'm an expert's horror show because I'm super casual about how I grow potatoes. I don't worry about it being seed potatoes. I use supermarket potatoes. I use leftover sprouted potatoes from the previous years. I'm just an extremely lazy potato grower, except I look at it as kind of like potato alchemy. I take sprouty old wrinkly potatoes and go, oh, you aren't really good for much but compost. And then I go, oh, wait, let's see if we can bring new life into you. Plant them quite casually, leave them alone, and don't really do anything fussy with them, and hope I get at least an equal amount back. And if it's more than that, hooray. So I get fresher potatoes from old tired potatoes. And I don't tend to get fussier about it than that. And another thing I do that's a little unusual for most people is that when I put my potatoes in the spot that I do what I call sloppy harvesting. So I'm not worried about getting every single tuber out of there, and I leave some of them. They overwinter in our fairly tough winters, which again is supposed to be almost an impossibility. And then first thing in the spring, the potatoes are just growing themselves. I stuff a few extra spare ones in where I see a space, and they're just happening. So I'm lazy, cheap. I'm lazy, I'm cheap, I don't do anything fussy, and yet potatoes are giving me really interesting harvests that I consider to be enough for my efforts. Hooray!
Awesome. I love it because when it comes down to gardening, I feel like there's different styles of gardening. There's gardeners who do a lot of stuff for their gardens. They do like that extra mile for their garden. They make sure everything's perfect. Then there's gardeners that are just gardeners that they just do what they got to do. In other words, they do the bare minimum, and yet they still have success and abundance. And either way is fine. I'm more in between. I would do my extra mile, but I'm also like, plant it and let's see if you do it. So I 100% agree with you. And especially gardening as a general, it started off as an affordable hobby. In other words, you find cheap things, you find food scraps, you find this. Seeds are generally affordable as well. And so you kind of make your garden the way you want it to be. And yes, you can make it more of a fancier type gardening if you like cottage gardens or anything like that. But majority of us just grow our plants to grow our own food that we enjoy and whatnot. So it definitely comes down to what the person wants, as well as what, style of gardener the person is. So I would definitely have to say that it depends. I also see my gardening auntie, South Florida, Sunshine Tropicals, aka Carol, with us. Welcome, Carol. We'd like to see you here. And so we're hoping she jumps on the live on October. We were discussing about that. I would love for her. And we actually have a collab as well going up soon. So
great.
We see something about that. So let's say we have a beginner gardener going into this whole spec. I think David just entered. Let's see. There you go.
Yay!
Hey, David, we can't hear you.
We have no voice for David now. He's muted.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yay!
Hey, David, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. You said potatoes, and anybody want to talk about it? I thought, oh my gosh, I had such an awesome year this year. First, I'm building a fence. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm working back over here. But anyway, yeah, I had a great time with potatoes this year. I did a lot of experimenting, and I'm glad I'm the part of the opening act for Tony because I learned from him too. So excellent
Awesome.
of information. And I learned that his way doesn't work for me.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And now I say that there's things that he does that, oh, by the way, this is where I'm at right now.
Ooh.
Yeah. The intercoastal waterway. Anyway, so, you know, he grows in those containers.
Mm-hmm.
And Emmanuel, you know what containers are like down here in Florida versus grow bags.
Yeah.
I know you grow in grow bags too, right?
I grow in grow bags, but I also grow in galvanized raised beds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. But you need a lot of drainage because everything stays humid down here.
Right.
That's just the way it is. No matter what you do, it's going to be moist. You can forget to water it for a week and a half. It's still moist.
Exactly.
Flying over.
David's scenery is remarkably much like your backdrop right now, Emmanuel, that you have like for our scene here.
Yeah.
It's a banana. So give us your.
I just wanted to note something that if Tony's able to join us, and it may not be today, it may have to be a different day, he really is stages above us in terms of experience and expertise regarding potatoes, like almost like a genius, I would say, really as close to we know as a genius. However, because he's in Wales, his experience for climate is similar to mine in the freeze, cold temperatures, etc., but extremely different than Dave's and extremely different than Emmanuel's. So some of what he has as valid information could work for someone like me if I chose to go further with my potato thing. If I became less lazy, less chaotic, he would be, you know, an excellent resource for that. But like you guys were saying, containers, Florida, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So David, tell us a little bit about your growing experience with potatoes.
Okay, so this year I actually grew 4 different ways. I grew 8 containers, 2 of each of 4 different ways. I did half with plastic containers, half with grow bags. And then the other way, I did half with brand new potatoes that I bought at my local Lowe's, and potatoes from last year's harvest that I let green sprout in the living room, not in the dark, but in just general ambient light. And the green sprouted potatoes in the grow bags so far outperformed everything for me. I mean, everything. I forget that I have a video that tells how many times I think it's like 12 times more or something like that than what I actually weighed the seed potatoes and weighed what I got out of each bag and did all the numbers and everything just to see. And in the container, the Lowe's potato in the plastic container, on one of them I got almost the same that I put in, and the other one I didn't. I didn't even get the one I put in. I got about 75% of what I put. You know, 2 little potatoes, I got less than that. The whole container, but and it was a little better in the grow bags, and then I did the green sprouted potatoes. And green sprouted is when you leave them in the, you know, sitting in a shelf where there's ambient light. It could get very little bit of sunlight, which is what these got, no direct sunlight, but they do those short, stubby green sprouts on them. And they're short and they're stubby. You don't break those off because that's what you want. You want those fat little stalks that are sticking out. And those on both containers and grow bags performed so much better. And they came up earlier. Interestingly enough, they didn't make as big of a stalk as the Lowe's potatoes did. And for those of you who don't know Lowe's, I think most people in here do. It's a very large, big box hardware supply place. So kind of generic. But anyway, so the Lowe's potatoes came up with these big old stalks, big as my thumb. And the green sprouted came up with little stalks as big as my pinky, but they produced so much more, just produced so much more.
That's awesome. I definitely have to say it's because since I also play with how you grew them organically, and that kind of plays into part. Of course, it's going to be different from the Lowe's one. So I definitely have to agree with you. In my case, I grew the best potatoes in containers, in other words, or in a grow bag, like how David said, because I just left it there. I forgot I even planted the potato there over the winter. And little did I know, when I harvested it, when I found the bag, I got a good, decent amount of potatoes off of it. Of course, they're not going to be these huge things of potatoes, but they were pretty decent in South Florida. So I'm still trying to figure out my strategy when it comes out to growing potatoes. But Carol, in other words, said, did you use the same soil in both and same potatoes?
I did. In fact, I mixed it all together in the same tarp. I put the soil in each container, the same amount of soil in each container. I put the same number of scoops of everything. And then what I did is I had a bigger container that I'd pour everything into that, slosh it around, then poured everything back. So it was totally homogenized, but I did every single bag exactly the same. I was really careful with it. And that's part of the planting for that video. You can see how I did that. But now South Florida Sunshine Tropical asked, did you mound up? And I know she was talking to Shawnee. I was planting Yukon Gold. They only grow on a single strata, and they were in fact, exactly like Tony does, just a few inches off the bottom and then covered the rest and then just leave them. I didn't mound anything up. And out of all those grow bags and containers, I had 2 green potatoes that are now being green sprouted. So didn't lose anything.
That's awesome. And when it comes down to, so we'll go ahead and kind of go off topic a little bit from the potatoes, but let's go ahead and talk about our growing experience and our gardening experience. Because something that we talk a lot about here is how, although, for example, me and David share the same state, each garden is different. And that's I also
different.
with my friend from my food forest journey. We were talking about that. She used to live here, now she moved somewhere else, but our gardens are so different in so many different ways. So let's go ahead and talk about it, because I know Jay, her climate's gonna be way different than the ones here in South Florida. So yeah, let's go ahead and say about our preparation for gardening season. Because for me, my primary garden season will be in fall and winter, because that's when we have the most favorable temperatures for our basic vegetables. Mangoes and whatnot can grow all year, and their prime seasons is in the summer. But I'm talking about basic vegetables. So David and Jay, what is your preparation for that when it comes down to growing and starting your veggies for the growing season?
Traditionally where I live, the vast majority of people start. They don't start their own plants indoors. So I alternate. Some years I do starts in the winter, and depending on what the plant is and the weeks out, that would start around February, March. And you want to have them ready for the cold starts. You want ready for early May. The vast majority of your plants you want for around May 20th that you will be setting out to the garden. But the actual gardening for the average gardener, not the avid gardener, is about May 20th till around September 1st, September 15th. And pretty much at what we call Labor Day, which is our holiday coming up shortly, the vast majority of our gardeners, I'd say 80-90% of regular gardeners would quit at that point. Our last frost is around May 15th. And our first frost is around October 20th. So the idea that I am still planting now continues to freak out the other gardeners. I'm planting my fall crops, and they look at me, and then they turn and look again, and they're assessing my mental state. trying to decide if I'm all right or not, because they can see I have seed packets out. Now, there's not a great variety I can plant at this time unless I do season extenders, but there is stuff I can grow. And my attitude is every bonus crop is a bonus crop. And if I depends on my health and the year, whether I'm able to get the energy to do season extenders to do even more. But my point is, every time I'm growing past the time of the traditional gardener is more free food, more healthy food for me and to give to other people. So I'm hoping this year I'm actually going out just as soon as the show finishes to plant some more fall crops. Again, a limited repertoire without getting super fancy about it. But the great thing is it's more food. So as an example, one year where I used minimal season extenders and kind of pushed the season a little bit more, I have a tiny community garden, meaning 10 feet by 20 feet. Nothing like the British ones. Tiny community garden. Piled up full, as tight as I can, going vertical, crowded in on each other, understory, overstory, just really cramming in the space, because every bit that I can get that's more is more that I can help other people with what I've got. But then the extending season is really, really interesting to me. And that's what I'm about to do is the cool weather crops that can take a little bit of frost or quite a lot of frost. And one year I did a little bit more seriously, not super fancy, but a little more seriously. And I got an additional 15 bushels out of that space of
Wow.
cool and cold weather stuff. It was so much that I couldn't hardly contain it all to bring it back. Heaped and heaped, bringing back on a little wagon with all these bushels, and people looking at me like, what are you doing? Where did that come from? So, and was it a wide variety of stuff? No, it was only about 7 different vegetables, but it was 7 different vegetables in great quantity. So that you need carrots? Here, have 5 pounds of organic carrots. Hey, you want kale? How much can you put in your freezer? Yeah. So I like the idea that it's continuing to surprise local people in what is normally the off season, hey, we've folded up our garden and we're all done and now we're resting. And I'm like, oh no, you're not. and 3 people who are going to fold up this weekend let me have their space in their garden. Ooh. So what does that mean is that I'm planting more stuff for them and the food bank that would have been fallow space, because they don't do anything like cover cropping or chopped leaves for mulch or anything like that for their soil. So my plan is I've already got some stuff planted, possibly a second crop of planting going in. Then I can give all that stuff away. And then when we're entirely done, I'm going to chop up a bunch of leaves so that their soil is going to be better next spring than it is now, because they don't do that. They don't really understand and know the necessity for not having bare soil. So, yeah, I'm excited. So I think I'm just going to count here. I believe I have five additional gardens.
Oh my gosh.
All are part of, with permission, planting more stuff in, because I have a real ethical issue about bare garden space not getting used. When people are going hungry, when nutritious food is expensive, it hurts me to know that some senior may be doing without, when if I just go buy a half pound of carrot seed, get it out there, get it in place, that could end up being 3 bushels of carrots later in the season, and a nice time for somebody else. Yeah.
In case anybody doesn't know from the replay, Jay actually lives in a over 55 community, and they have plots within the community that they share.
Yes.
That's awesome. So you're shooting for 100 bushels this year, aren't you?
No, not possible. Unfortunately, I have my own disabilities and health problems, so I have limitations about what I'm
Yeah.
able to do. But I have a very I don't know how you'd put it, sort of like a little bit of a teachery manner, but also kind of like a social worker or ethical manner regarding my gardening. So you have the scientific method. Follow Dave about what he's doing in his video about measuring and quantifying what works, what doesn't work. I go,
No,
oh,
no, no, no.
what kind of stuff could I put in there? Joel, jump it all in a bowl, throw it in there, cover it over, and I hope that works out. And so I'm chaotic gardening. Dave is the scientific method.
Oh, no, 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 no. Don't put me in scientific method. That is, I had to muster every brain cell in my being to make that video. Because I'm very chaotic.
Well, regarding potatoes, he chose to limit himself and try to have some results worth following. So yes.
And yeah, and I was very pleased with with what I learned. I mean, it was eye-opening for me.
Yes. So whereas me, I'm like plants happy, produce happy, people who need it happy. Let's go. So I'm a chaotic hippie, I guess you might say. And in my garden, I should actually take a picture again soon. It's right now such a cornucopia of just absolute absolute green and just plants absolutely everywhere, that when people walk through our community garden has 43 small 10 by 20 plots. And when people come through, they walk through or use golf carts going through. When they go through, it's very funny to be working in a nearby plot and them see my plot and they go, what? And then they turn it to double take and look and go, what? Because it's so uniquely crammed with stuff, that they go, wow, I think we could learn something from that person. Boy, do they know how to grow, which of course is great for my ego. And I'm working or helping in another nearby plot. And so I come over and go, hey, actually, is there something in particular you'd like to know? So, and then I help them with like how and when you plant garlic, or why you can do an understory and an overstory, or how to grow vertically. When it comes to garden talk, it's hard to stop me.
True. It is hard. Me too.
Yes. So anyway, I've talked about kind of my area, which, by the way, just for people who are late coming in, I live in Canada. I live in one of the warmer, more temperate areas, about the second warmest area of Canada, but still can be very cold. We have a limited season. We have to take advantage of it when we can, but more people can work with what I call the shoulders of the seasons, the spring and fall, than they think. And especially if you're willing to do things that kind of help moderate the temperatures in your garden. But even without that, you can still do a fair bit. There's about 7 to 10 things that are not very exotic that you can still plant in September in Canada and be fairly okay with it, giving a full harvest. And if you get a little bit fancy about the varieties and types, you can do about another 10. So get planting.
So now there's something interesting about your area, Jay, that after I figured out where you are, that's actually a lot like our area. Now, Emmanuel, how far are you from the beach? You're a ways, aren't you?
Huh?
You're a ways, right? Like 20-minute drive?
Yeah, like 20, 30 minutes drive, depending on what beach we're going to. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the interesting similarities between you, Jay, and me. Now, I'll speak to mine first. And if you've watched many of my videos, you know, we live on a peninsula. We're surrounded by the Choctawhatchee Bay this way. And we got the Gulf of Mexico. In fact, I can actually see the Gulf of Mexico between two buildings that way. That's how close it is right here. But we have an absolute weather bubble. It's amazing because we will stay very stable temperatures. In fact, we have been between 83 and 87 for over a month now. That's highs and lows, 83 to 87. That's been us for a month now, and it's been beautiful. But Jay, you've got that lake right next to you, and you get the lake effect, and everybody thinks lake effect, oh, snow. Well, in the fall, you have a much longer lake effect to the warm side because it takes a while for that lake
Yes.
to cool down. And so you get that prevailing wind, and that's interesting.
Yes. I'm actually about 10 kilometers, which I think is about 7-ish miles, 6-7 miles from Lake Huron, which is a very, very large Great Lake. And it's quite deep and quite large in just about every dimension. Not the largest, depending on how you configure it, what you're counting, depth or width, but basically one of the biggest. And it's really not far. I'm not right up against it, but I'm within 10 kilometers. So lake effect affects my garden quite a lot. And secondarily to that, where I actually live, I live near a pond. So when you talk about humidity and stuff, we're at 80 to 100% humidity almost all of the time. It dries up a tiny bit in the winter, but we are also extremely affected by being in a humid area. In fact, when I go to dry areas like Las Vegas and stuff, I actually almost have trouble breathing. I joke that I have gills from having grown up in such a humid area for a long time. So I'm kind of like gasping when we're in dry desert conditions. It's like, what? So I very much enjoy living in this area, and for Canada, in terms of being a gardener, it's pretty much the second best area in which to garden in the whole country, which is, we have a very large country, but also very cold. So I'm fortunate to live here, and I live in an agricultural district, but the vast majority of the agriculture around me is like industrial type farming, whereas I'm a lot more focused on home gardener type stuff. Yeah. So one of the things that Emmanuel was mentioning earlier on was like, how do we start up our gardening season, and how do we garden through the year? How do you do that, Dave?
Well, I do seed starts for some things, tomatoes, peppers. I actually have some seed starts for kale right now, but our climate is such that kale will survive year round, a lot like Emmanuel. If you can get kale to actually, no, your kale won't survive the summer, will it?
Mm-hmm. It will fry. It will fry.
Have you grown dino kale?
So when it comes down to kale, I've tried growing different varieties, including the dino kale. I've tried growing multiple times, but I've never had success with it. Although I know it can happen because I've had people in my area grow it. But for me, like how I mentioned before when I spoke to like Danny and whatnot about seed starting, I'm not a huge seed starting person. I usually buy my seeds already started from a local family-owned nursery. The only things I pretty much start from seed is like my cabbages or sometimes my squash or my zucchinis, because those are quick and easy. And I know that it's hard to fail with those. But like things with like kale and whatnot, I've been very picky with it. And so I usually get starts, but I will plan to grow kale this growing season. So I'm giving it another try this growing season because I have lots of seeds. I just need to start them and stay on top of it.
Yeah. And that's my big problem is staying on top of it, because I will forget it. I'm flaming ADHD. I will forget it. I've learned. We actually have a bay window in our dining room that we walk past all day. That's the only place that I can remember to make sure they're watered. And I will totally forget that things are out there. In fact, the first year we were in this house, before I figured that out, I killed over 200 hot pepper plants out in the Florida room because they were out of sight, out of mind. And you go out there 3 weeks later and there's nothing but
dirt,
dead things, dead little twigs. But now, on the other hand, I did a lot of overwintering my hot peppers. I overwintered 23 hot peppers, and 17 of them survived, and that was freaking excited.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thrilled. In fact, I thought I was going to get 19, and I actually put 2 more out. And I was like, okay, You could do it. You could do it. They didn't do it. They didn't make it.
That's actually a very high result for overwintering peppers. Like
Yeah.
that.
No.
Really.
Now my first attempt at overwintering, I tried to overwinter 5 plants. 2 of them were Dragon Cayenne. I had a Thai Hot and jalapeno. Jalapeno just gave up the ghost immediately. The Thai Hot, it struggled and then finally gave up. And it was just right at the end of winter. And my 2 Dragon Cayennes, they were sort of coming back with leaves and stuff, and they were starting to shrivel. But both of them put out pups from the roots.
Oh.
I've never seen that since, but they gave little pups, and I was real careful. I babied those things. I chopped off the old plant. I babied that thing, and then I eventually planted it back out. We were in an apartment then. I put it back out in a grow bag, and they grew for years. So the next winter that I overwintered, I actually had a little low tunnel cover over a bed. That did great for me. I saved I saved about half my peppers with just a plastic thing stretch over 2 8-foot cattle panels outside, and it survived. But the winter wasn't that cold. That was the winter we had the freeze on Christmas. So we did get freezing temperatures for 3 days straight, but they managed to get enough sun where they warmed up during the day and they managed to survive. They eventually all got cut off at the ground and regrew again. But I had a really 50% success rate, which is about what I've always heard. And then this past winter, 17 out of 23, that was very exciting. I feel like I'm a pro now.
Oh, you've said it out loud.
I know.
Yeah.
Wait till you see my raised garden bed tour coming up. It is okay. So the grass is taller than my pepper plants, and some of my pepper plants are between 4 and 5 feet tall.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I prefer people who are real with if you are a gardening educator, you're trying to create your own content, please be real with us.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's areas you don't get to weeding, areas that are left untidy because you just have 10 other duties to do,
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, I think that makes it more approachable for everybody else is, and what we experienced here, like what we're talking about here, is different levels. We started off talking about potatoes, and we've got a chaotic hippie that just basically puts potatoes in the ground and is thrilled that stuff happens. We were talking about potentially in the future, having a chat with someone who's an expert. And then we've got Dave, who's organized, but chose to be super organized this year to get us good data on what works in his situation. I mean, fantastic, right?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Peppers for me, I think like out of all the veggies I grow in my garden, peppers has to be one of the ones I demise the most, unfortunately, because here in my area, I love growing peppers like when they're good, but in my area, since we deal with lots of humidity, there is not one chance where one pepper plant will not get whiteflies in my garden.
Oh,
like I have no issues with whiteflies in my garden, but whenever I plant a pepper, whiteflies are there. Like, it's terrible. And when I start from seed, cannot.
I have your solution for whitefly. I stumbled on a solution for whitefly down here.
Good.
When you get those poinsettias at Christmas and decorate the house and everybody, when whoever buys the poinsettias, put those poinsettias in the ground right with those peppers, and the whitefly love poinsettia more than tomatoes, more than peppers, more than cucumbers, more than anything. And we always save our poinsettias for the next year. So we end up with, a dozen poinsettias. Half of them are green and half of them are red because they're brand new. But first time I did that, I stuck it out there amidst the tomatoes and peppers and stuff. And I was out there watering, and I bumped that poinsettia, and this cloud of whitefly just went right back to it. And I'd never heard of that before. In fact, I still haven't confirmed it. But every year, my poinsettias get whitefly. And I have never had a problem with whitefly.
So So you're using
Yeah.
it as a trap crop now?
Exactly. And I need someone to confirm that. Carol, Shawnee, Emmanuel, someone confirm that for me. I would really.
Wow. Great.
Yeah.
For me, like, because I've grown poinsettias very rarely on occasion. Usually, when I grow poinsettias, it's because a company that I partner with send them out for me to promote them during Christmas time. But when I grew poinsettias, I never dealt with whiteflies on them, surprisingly. Never.
They're gonna come in the
With the
spring.
peppers, I'm gonna have to try that out. But with the peppers, I've had success growing peppers like cayennes, for example, abundance off of them. I never have to overwinter them. They grow all year round. For me,
Oh,
but
lucky.
I haven't grown peppers in the past like year or two because it's just so bad when it comes down to the Wi-Fi. Like my neighbor, she grows like Scotch bonnets and she just throws the seeds and those things become enormous and she has abundance of them. But they do get Wi-Fi towards more of the hotter seasons. So I want to get into growing some more of these rarer type peppers like purple bell peppers and whatnot, but I'm demised it a lot. Like right now, for example, I did an experiment to see if I could grow cucumbers during our summer heat because I was curious. You know, I haven't grown cucumbers in a while. I was curious. I planted them in full shade underneath the mango seed, and I've been feeding them, watering them, and so far they've been doing really, really well. They're actually starting to flower. So I have been keeping my eye on them. I have been, seeing if it's a potential where I could grow them during the summer. And from what it looks like, it's been really, really good. So hopefully I get a harvest soon because those cucumbers grow really, really fast when it comes down to them producing. So,
Yep. Well, Carol just pointed out that poinsettias
oh,
in the
also,
ground or in pots are toxic, and that is true. And we don't have any pets or kids, so.
And one of my thoughts when I read that, I just kind of skimmed what she said. My thought was you could always cage the plant, to sort of protect any unwary animals or kids or whatever, so that the white fly can still get at them, but kids can't. So
Yep.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
I realized because when it comes down to toxic plants, I used to be super careful because I used to have a dog that roamed around in my garden freely and he would eat whatever he would see, really. So then I had to be careful with what I planted, for example, like because at the time I was a ornamental gardener and never really grew my own food. I had to careful with planting like foxglove, for example, because that is highly deadly toxic to them. But he's no longer with us, so then I decided to plant everything I couldn't. So once he passed on, I planted everything I couldn't because I had to wait. In other words, but it was really, really. I'm able to grow these things now. Poinsettias, like I mentioned, we never really grow them, but when I do, it's pretty fun to grow them. So I'll definitely give that a go with the peppers.
Yeah, try it. I would like confirmation. Now, okay, I was talking about my grass all over the peppers. Here's the interesting part. And I remembered Carol just says, still getting jalapenos. So Ms. Bowtie said, I need some jalapeno peppers. Do you have any out there? I'm thinking, oh, great. They're buried in the grass. So I go out there and I'm literally pawing through the grass because I know about where the plant is. And you know what? All my peppers are growing strong.
Wow.
There are dozens of peppers under there. And that's what I'm going to show in my garden tour, my raised garden bed tour. Is that, and we have some cages in our in the outer bed. Yes. Oh, it was like machete.
Wow.
But I got stuff growing in there that hadn't grown yet. It's pretty cool.
Would it be okay if I switch topics? It's still gardening.
Yeah.
My thrill this week is Gravenstein, which will be almost an alien plant to most of you down there in Florida. I planted as a bargain found locally tree, an apple tree called Gravenstein about 5 years ago. I have absolutely no knowledge, no skill, no space. I live in a tiny, tiny lot, and I planted it in a spot that was not quite ideal. Planted it, more or less left it alone. Now we're at about year 5, and without any skilled intervention on my part, the Gravenstein came through for me. Now, the Gravenstein, for those who are not aware, the Gravenstein is a traditional apple from, I believe it's Denmark, certainly from one of the Nordic countries. And so luckily, I live in kind of a, not a Nordic, but a cold country. And the Gravenstein that I have is a dwarf, luckily, because I'm a short person and a small space. And it's producing apples like crazy for me. And I am super, super happy because I did nothing. Now, some traditional apple growers were supposed to help me with pruning and information. Didn't quite come through. I had some health issues, so the Gravenstein just kind of did its own thing. And it's a triplod, and pardon my pronunciation there, but what that means is in pollination, it requires 2 other pollinator apple trees.
Really?
So it's one of the reasons why it's not commercially seen. Okay, so it's a heritage apple from Nordic countries, and there's a short list of what can pollinate it, but you need 2. So not a Gravenstein and 2 of a short list of like something like 5 or 6 possible other nearby apple trees, which must be producing pollen at the right time. And this is an early tree. So somehow all of the things that you would hope in terms of pollinator species and pollinator apple trees happened to be in my area, not through any plan on my part or anything, came together, and I'm now getting about a dozen apples a week.
Whoa.
It will happen for about an 8-week period because of the way the Gravenstein goes. So one of the reasons, again, it's not commercially known or considered by most people is because of that triplod requirement of 2 other pollinators of apple trees at the same time, but also it doesn't come on all at once, which is what commercial growers want. But as a backyard grower, getting about a dozen apples a week, fresh and right at your door, sounds fantastic to me. And it's going to happen over about a 6 to 8 week period.
That's amazing.
Great. Yes. So
Anthony just did over at Millennial Gardener. He just did that video on his grafted is it a pear, I think?
Yep.
But 3 or 4, I can't remember. I think it's 3 different pairs because it's similar. They have to pollinate each other.
Yes.
And it's all on the same tree. And he did it himself.
And that's the direction I may go in eventually. But one of the things is because I'm kind of, you might say, a low budget gardener, not a big budget going on. I watch for the end of season bargains. And when the apple trees show up in our area as an end of season clearance at 50, 75% off, Zoom, I'm right there grabbing what I can. And this year, I also picked up a Golden Delicious and a peach tree. Don't ask me what, a peach tree, but I can look it up. And also I picked up, that's native, that's like that can handle our winters, because not all peach trees can. And a Macintosh. And the Golden Delicious is one of the ones that's a cultivar for my Gravenstein. This was not by design. Again, chaotic hippie gardener. I got what was on sale, and it just happened to all come together.
Nice.
So there's a what do you call it, crab apple that's kind of up the hill from me, about 1 kilometer away. I suspect that was the other one that made it so that my Gravenstein could produce apples. So I'm very happy that in the future I'm doing what you might call a gradual movement towards a miniature food forest, because I live in a little HOA, small, tiny space area. But I'm trying to show by example to have people move away from ornamentals into having food be part of their living space.
All right,
That's
so
awesome.
Tony has joined on with us, so let's go ahead and welcome him in.
Hey guys, I'm really sorry I'm late.
Oh, we've got the crowd warmed up for you, man. We talked
right.
about potatoes.
I've been
we
stuck
prayed
in
for
work.
minutes.
Ah, okay.
we've had so many wildfires here this last few weeks, and I've been literally going from fire to fire, and it's run over today. So I was hoping to be back way earlier than now. So I do apologize to everybody.
That's okay.
It is all right. It is 100% okay. So we have the potato expert with us now. So let's go ahead and jump right back into the topic. So Tony, go ahead and give us some insight on your growing experience with potatoes and your techniques, what you found easier, what have you found tougher when it comes down to growing potatoes. Lay it all down for us.
All right. So when I started growing potatoes, like most people, I grew in a traditional trench method where you'd dig a trench out, you put some manure in, put the potatoes in, and then bury them over. And the biggest issues that I was having was a pest called wireworm. Lives in the soil, just burrows through the potatoes, ruins the crop. So I decided to start trying to grow in bags first off to get away from the wireworm. And excuse me, let me just knock this sound off that. And so I started growing in bags, but what I found with bags was they dried out really, really quickly. So I then eventually ended up with containers and started producing my own compost so that I could fill these containers, because buying bagged soil is expensive. If you're doing the amount I'm doing, I think I've done something like 90 something containers this year. So so it can get expensive. What I did was, though, is I actually produced my own compost, used that then for the containers, and I just started from there. And of course, over a period of about 15, 16 years, I've sort of evolved the growing method, because it's like everything else. You find challenges on specific years. Some years it was too dry, other years they were too wet. Then, like, we had a lot of wind that we tend to get, and that smashed down all the homes. So, you know, you find solutions to these problems, and that's how I end up with the system that I have now, where I have a framework that goes over the potatoes that supports all of the foliage. And then on top of that, then there is drip irrigation, you know, to water them, because I grow them in quite a tight space. And a lot of people say, well, why aren't you getting blight with that? And what they don't seem to realize is that blight is a soil-borne pathogen that, you know, splashes up and comes from the soil mainly. It can come in on the air as well. But because I'm using drip irrigation rather than going there with a watering can, watering all the leaves, blight loves humid moisture around the leaves. And because I'm not watering the leaves and they stay dry, they can't take over and attach themselves to the leaves properly. So I haven't had blight in about 14 years, and the gardens either side of me get absolutely plastered in it. My crop this year, I don't even know what I've had yet, because I haven't harvested nothing, because for the last nearly 8 weeks, I've been doing nothing but these wildfires. And fortunately, we've just had a bit of rain, which is quite nice. But all the tops of and all the homes have all died back completely. And I haven't even touched a bucket. They're all just sat there at the moment, waiting for me to get some time.
So I know David has a quick question for you. So David, go ahead.
Okay, I have a challenge for you, Tony.
All right.
And it's something that you said in your potato video that you sent me to like 3 times before I did my experiment this past year. But you were talking about first season and late season potatoes, and you called them determinants and indeterminates. And I've been trying to confirm that through studies, and I'm having a difficult time. In fact, was it Gardner Scott or Mark over at Self-Sufficient Me? Someone said that there are no, I know who it was. I'm not going to say his name. It was someone that says weird things. There's no such thing as determinate or indeterminate potatoes. And I thought, what? My buddy Tony over here, he said
Yeah.
So talk to me about that. I have been
Okay.
dying to ask you this.
So in the US, you use determinate to indeterminate. In the UK, we use first early, second early, and main crop. Okay. And the equivalent, a determinate potato is when you know the growing pattern. Okay. So this is a potato like our first and second early. They grow very bush-like. Okay. They grow on a single level. So it doesn't matter. This is why they grow so quickly, okay? Because they produce all of the potatoes at once on one level, okay? And then they'll grow out. And this is why when you're growing a determinate potato, you can put multiple seed tubers in a container, okay?
Right.
For those that have seen any of my videos, first early, second early, or determinate, I grow in 2 layers, 4 seed potatoes in a container. For main crop, which is an indeterminate potato, I then only use 2 seed potatoes, because as they grow, the potatoes actually grow with them. And this goes back, the reason why you had to hill potatoes in the fields, farmers had to hill potatoes when they were growing in the traditional row methods, because what used to happen was the potatoes would be growing up the stems and they would push through the surface. You don't get that with determinate potatoes. If you dig a hole and put a determinate potato in, it will grow wherever that tuber is. So you'll get a level of potatoes there. They don't push up through the soil. And what you find is a lot of people will say there's no such thing because they've got the UK thing in their head, or it's a first early, second early, and main crop, and they treat them all the same here, because it's just easier, especially if you're trenching, to just grow them all exact same time and everything else. But when you understand the genetics of a potato and its growth patterns, then you can really make a difference, and you can cut your workload as well. So like we said, we can, if we were to grow a determinate potato and just put 2 seed tubers in the bottom of a container, 8/10 of that container's compost or soil or whatever you're putting in it, the medium that you're growing in, is actually wasted, because the only thing coming through there is a stem. So this is why we can grow on 2 levels, and knowing that allows us to grow on 2 levels. Whereas with a main crop, we know they're going to continue growing through the layer structure. And also usually, not all times, but usually the first early, the second early, and the determinates, they tend to be a smaller tuber as well. So it's just all about growth patterns and understanding what the genetic of the actual seed you're going to use is, and its growth habit. And when you can control that and you understand that, then you can put systems in place to get the best harvest out.
And just a note about that is, for those that are unaware, you go to Tony's website. He has a tool that's entirely about potatoes and to help you become more skilled in your potato growing. While
I'm here, then I'll give you guys the heads up. I'm in the process of coding out an application, a phone app. And the potato tool will get rolled into that as well.
Nice.
So it'll all be it's probably not going to be ready until spring anyway. But it's something I'm working on quite a lot at the moment, which is not just the fires, but another reason why I haven't been doing so many long form videos. I've been just doing the shorts, and because that's taken up a huge amount of time. But I believe it'll be a really good resource for people to be able to use. And they've got it on their phone in the garden rather than having to come back to a computer. And I will roll the potato database into it.
Or when you're shopping, I'm standing at the seed potato section in my local nursery and going, okay, 10 choices here. I don't know what to do. Boom.
This app will just have your entire garden there for you, and it'll be personal to every single person. So you could hold up 2 apps or 2 phones with with the app in, and no phone would be identical. They'll be all different. There's none of this generic icons and things like that, and spacing. Because we all have different gardens, right? So it's taken a lot of programming at the moment. And because I'm not a programmer, I am finding some challenges, but I am working on them. And but I'm designing it so that when you first put in your user details, you're going to put in what zone you're in, your climates and things like that. And then the whole app will work based on just your climate and your garden and everything else. So if you go there and you say, when should I plant this? It's going to tell you to plant it based on your location rather than, what the seed packets are saying for the UK or whatever. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, it will, differentiate between, the gardeners and stuff like that. So it's going to take a while, but the potato database that you're talking about, Jay, will be rolled into that as well. So eventually it won't be on the website then, it will be rolled into the app.
Okay, great. Sounds fantastic. Is this public information, or are we just hearing?
No, you're the first to know.
Fantastic. So we're getting...
But like I said, it's something I haven't told people. So I'm going to release it in 4 phases. And the first phase will be a testing phase. So I'll ask some specific people, and they know they are ready to test, and they'll give me feedback. I will then make adjustments to try and make the user functionality better for those, and hopefully have a free version out by spring. That's the hope. And then there will be a paid version as well, which will have a lot more stuff that I have to pay for to make it available, if you get my drift. So obviously there's going to be a cost to that, but people won't need to pay for a good usable app. They'll get a good free usable app. So, and the potato database will be part of the free app. So it'll still be there free anyway.
Wow, great. So we're getting kind of like a news flash here. Fantastic.
Yeah. Groundbreaking.
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Best things come to those who wait, doesn't it? This means I'm late.
This is to make up for your tardiness, saving lives and putting out fires in properties.
You won't believe honestly, guys, you won't believe the wildfires we've been dealing with. We've had one just around the corner. It's been burning for 3.5 weeks. So it's crazy at the moment.
Wow. Actually, I might believe I'm up in Canada.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
you will believe it.
I don't currently live in the fire zone, but north of us, we've had similar conditions to all of what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's horrendous at the moment.
Canada's primary export into the U.S. is smoke. Thank you very much.
Well, we've just had a little shower now as I was driving home, and they've forecast rain for a whole week. So I'm hoping that'll be the end of it for a little while. So, because I'm nights tomorrow, I was days today, but it'll be nice now if it rains all night and all day tomorrow, and then I can have like a little bit of a relax a little bit in work, like.
We were actually in drought in my area, and we'd had the warmest temperatures in records, like, breaking any records we'd ever had for weather. And so we had to do things like fire bans and watering issues, etc., just for safety. And a few people were being a bit cheeky and sarcastic about it. And I said, I walk across the grass to get to my garden, and the grass crunches.
Yeah.
What part of toasting marshmallows makes sense to you in a let's have a bonfire way? Like this just
it's crazy.
Like,
and the thing is as well, because with us, we've had 4 major heat waves this summer. With real long periods, and that just dries out the ground so much. And then the peat and things that's in the mountains around here, that becomes hydroscopic, and it just gets rid of the water, any water that sits there. So of course, the fire then burns down into that, and it's just burning underground constantly, and no matter how much water you put on it, it just sheds it. So it's just a real battle, and like it's been so hot. It hasn't been as hot as it was like last year, but what we've had is the duration has been a long duration, and then we'll have like a little shower, and then we'll have another few weeks of it. I mean, I've gone through so much water in the garden this year. It's been absolutely crazy.
In fact, you were actually just taking the words out of my mouth in terms of hydrophobic, that a lot of people don't really realize what it does for us in terms of soil. Is these continuous droughts means that when water comes, it does not absorb in the same ways.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's one of many pieces of the danger for fire, drought, hot temperature.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it just sheds that water, and then it takes a real good rain for saturation point. You can have a real big download, but that just sheds all of that off to drains or whatever it is. And you think, that's giving my soil a really good water. And you just dig through the surface, and about that far down, it's bone dry, so watering has been a bit of a challenge this year. But it's been a real strange year, because this year I don't know if you've seen in some of the shorts that I've done, I had homes so high, they were like shoulder height on me as I was walking on my potatoes. Now that's usually down to too much nitrogen in the compost. And it's homemade compost, but I did use a lot of grass clippings in it this year. So that might be a bit of a trade-off, because if it didn't have time to fully mature when I used it, then that nitrogen might have carried through. So until I empty these buckets, I won't know if there's been a trade-off against the tuber formation against the home formation, because it takes a lot of energy to support all that huge top growth. And if you look at some of the photos, it's just so tall. It's like nearly burying me.
Well, your tradition is weighing them, so you will,
we'll find out. I just got to get a chance to get up there and empty them. And I've run a few experiments this year as well. So I've tested whether growing in quite a lot of coffee would make a difference, because potatoes prefer an acidic soil. So I've used coffee as an amendment. I've used bracken as an amendment. I've used all sorts of different things. So I've got quite a few tests going on as well. Hence the reason I had so many containers, because of course I still need the normal harvest that I do. All the other containers then are these little experiments with one thing or another in them.
Well, you've affected David, because before you came in, we were discussing potatoes and how we grow them, and he's channeled himself to grow in a more scientific method and is measuring and noting the results.
This man right here was my inspiration. I channeled every brain cell to Tony that I could. You want scientific method? That's Tony right there.
Well, the great thing about this new app, Dave, when it comes out, is it'll have a built-in journal, right? And you'll be able to put notes and stuff like that. But the best thing is I'm going to be incorporating a version of AI into it that will every year it learns on what your garden did. So an example for it would be, say for argument's sake, your potatoes got blight this year, and you put in the journal or in the notes of the potatoes itself that you were overhead watering, and on the 15th of August you had blight that you had to then terminate the crop. Well, next year the AI will say, last year you had blight at this time, here's some things you can do to prevent it this year. So it'll be like a little best buddy on your shoulder, giving you little pointers where you can help yourself against what happened last year in your garden. And it's all specific to your garden. So, and what's happened to you, So, like I said, all of that side of things is gonna be quite hard. So that's why I'm rolling it out in phases.
We're gonna have a little Tony on our shoulder. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, AI Tony.
Worcestershire Project has asked what is bracken, and I don't know either. It's not.
Okay.
I don't know either.
So bracken is, have you guys got ferns?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So bracken is dried ferns. Okay. So all across the mountains we have here. I live in South Wales valleys, and it's called the valleys because there's just something like about 16 or 18 mountains, and they are huge mountains. And all across these mountains, it's just all ferns. When it gets really hot, they dry off completely, and that's what bracken is, and that's usually what ends up causing fires. But they're really good as a carbon source for your compost. They're good as a mulch if you can scrunch them up or shred them. So they're quite useful for a number of things.
Oh,
That's
What
awesome.
kind of fern?
They're just like green ferns. They're not like, it's not like your ornamental shuttlecock ferns or anything, but like the mountain ferns that we have here. I don't know if you guys have them, but they get quite tall. They're probably 5-6 feet. So they are big ferns. Like, I don't even know what the name of them is. I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different types of ferns. I have ferns that grow in my palm trees, and that's one kind of fern. I've got an Asiatic fern, and I know Emmanuel's got a number of ferns.
Yeah, don't go putting them ones in. But it's like a resource, you know, like I've said, so many people when I talk about composting and things like that. I mean, good gardeners, they look for resources that they can store and then utilize later. So like grass clippings, we all know about that. It's a great green for compost. But coffee grounds, now people are learning that's another good green for compost. But then they think about carbon sources. Well, okay, what can we use? We can use paper, cardboard, you know, and all of these sort of things, leaves, yeah. But it's nice to be able to bring in some other carbon sources that don't cost any money, that can bulk out your compost, give you the carbon you require, but also bring in different forms of nutrients from different areas that you wouldn't normally have. So so it's just another carbon source that I like to use. And I find with good gardeners, they're looking for these resources all the time.
Yes, in fact, one of the things that I frequently discuss with other gardeners is to basically find your own local free, basically curbside waste, and make sure that it's from good sources, i.e. no pesticides, herbicides, etc., stuff used in it, but the good organic stuff, there's tons of that available. And I've been helping people. I've been convincing people into some of my ways of gardening. And one is I do raised beds. It's basically a type of adapted humiculture. And with adapted humiculture, I'm essentially encouraging people to use forms of curbside yard waste from good sources to essentially fill the bed, but then also later for the mulch to top dress it and keep it healthy and things like that. And people are quite surprised that they don't necessarily have to go to the store for every aspect of their garden, that it's literally sitting out there for free, waiting for you if you know what you can use it for.
Yeah. I've got about 3 tons of resources, and we're talking like grass clippings and cuttings and leaves and all sorts, just sat in bays in my garden at the moment, waiting for me to get the 5 tons of compost that I've been making over summer out, so that I can get that into the next batch. Of course, I've got all the garden stuff starting to come off because all that's dying back now, you know. And, you know, people are amazed by they go, why do you have so much compost? But it's like, for me, it's the lifeblood, you know, and I've got a big garden, so I need it. But it's like, this next batch will come off now. That'll go under a tarp for most of winter to give me room in the compost bays, and then that'll get used for the potatoes. The stuff that's coming out of the potatoes is going to end up in the ground, you know. So it's a cycle. It's not used once. I've grown my potatoes in it. I'm going to take those spuds out, and that compost is now going to go as a topper for my beds. It may not have all the nutrients that I want in it, but it's going to have good humus. It's going to have good structure. So that's going to go just on the beds. It's great as a mulch, you know, so helping to reduce the weed growth. And once I filled my containers early spring, because I don't forget now I'm probably going to make another 5 tons, so I'm going to have probably 10 ton of compost sat there in spring. I'm not going to use all of that in my containers, so what's left then will go on top of the container compost that's out on the beds. So you're layering constantly year after year, and you improve the soil depth, you improve moisture retention. It's just so good for collecting resources and doing things like that, and the spuds every year are getting the best compost because it's having it first.
Yes.
Definitely.
One of my common phrases is become a soil farmer. And to me, that's one of the most crucial things that you do as a gardener is the work behind it, the research behind it, the skill acquisition over time, noticing what resources are available and stuff. To me, you called it the lifeblood of the garden, or a phrase very similar to that. And I strongly believe that. And also things like becoming disease resistant and stronger, healthier plants, taller plants, better plants. You learn how to refine what you're going to do to keep continuously improving your soil. It's probably one of the best skills you can get as a gardener, in my opinion. There are other skills, but it's one of the best.
Don't get me wrong, it's not easy work, right? Creating your own compost, especially if you're doing it to the extent I am. But what it does is saves you so much time later. You're not buying, shop bought fertilizers. You're not having to worry about feeding so much. You're not having to water so much because it's holding that water in. It acts like, a water sponge in effect that just holds that water there. You're cutting down the work that you have to do on weed growth. It's just a win-win situation when you're producing good quality compost for yourself. And you know what's in it? Like, some of the store-bought compost. I opened a bag at the beginning of this year to go and sow some seeds because I hadn't sifted it because of the weather. And I pulled a fork out of the bag of compost, a dinner fork. And I was like, how did this get in you? Like, do you know what I mean? It's in this compost. I'm thinking, Jesus. So you just don't know what's in them, and they go to these recycling centers. Everything's ground up. A lot of it is like bark and things like that. And that's fine. But it does make you think sometimes about the nutritional value of it. And it's okay for seeds because you're not really worried about the nutrition. It's only later on,
Yes.
But yeah, you just don't know what's in them. But by producing your own, you know exactly where you are.
Definitely.
So if you find a sharp metal knife with a metal handle,
I got a set.
Knife, we're missing one.
I'll send it your way.
Appreciate it.
So, Emmanuel, did you have some specific questions you wanted to ask Tony? Did you have anything?
So I didn't really have anything in particular. It's kind of going to be like what we're doing now, like an open chat or like everything about growing potatoes. And so I think I'd have to say for the final question to start to get things kind of wrapped up. We've been up here for over an hour now, which is awesome.
Nice.
I love it. Which is my biggest is when it comes down to being a beginner gardener, when it comes down to growing potatoes, when I found myself starting off, it could be a little bit intimidating because potatoes do require certain things for it to be successful. So something I would say or ask Tony is, what are some tips and advice you could give to a beginner gardener who's wanting to get into growing their own potatoes, but they haven't jumped into it and they would like to get off on a good foot? So what would be those tips and advice you'd have to give them?
So first things first is think about your growing environment, your length of the days that you have available to you before the frosts kick in as well, because that's going to determine what varieties that you can grow. Okay. Again, the potato tool that Jay mentioned earlier, that can help you with that sort of thing. But knowing the varieties that you can grow in your area will really make a big difference. Because it may be that you can grow 2 crops. Like in the UK, we can potentially grow 2 crops. We could grow a determinate variety for Christmas, but you would really have to balance the likelihood of blight kicking in, okay? So first off, find where your growing environment is. Are you going to be growing in the ground? Are you going to be growing in containers? If you're growing in the ground, then you need to be thinking, okay, when's my first frost date? And then, you know, plant them a couple of weeks before that, because if they push through and then they have a frost, you've just set that tuber back. They will push out new homes again, but the problem you have with it is you've already taken energy from the tuber and the plant and allowed it to get frosted. So if you're going to plant outside, work back a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and then plant before your last frost date. If you're growing in containers and you have a greenhouse or a polytunnel available to you, well, you can sow early. You know, you protect them, you can put a bit of fleece over them, and you can get your crops out really early. And you can definitely do two lots of crops then if you wanted, because, you know, you could be sowing them in February or March instead of the likes of April, you know, late April, early May, you know. So it's a big difference there, that 8 weeks. And especially if you're growing a determinate, which typically takes 12, 14 weeks or something, as opposed to a main crop that could be 18, 20, 24 weeks. So, you know, that just allows you to do that. Then you want to be looking at your soil composition. If you're going to grow in the ground, have you got alkaline soils? Because potatoes don't like it much, and you'll end up with, you know, with things like diseases that can really sort of take them off because they become weak. They prefer an acidic soil. And by doing that, you're less likely to pick up things like scab and what have you. Watering is really important. Keep that consistent, but not oversaturate it, because you want it to be moist, but you don't want it saturated. If you get saturated, you're going to start rotting tubers. But if you allow it to go dry and then water, firstly, what happens is it becomes hydrophobic and doesn't absorb enough water, and people think they've given it loads because it's poured out the bottom. And what happens then is the plants start to terminate early because they didn't get the water they required. So keeping it consistently moist, this is where drip irrigation is really good, because you don't get huge amounts of water, but it's enough to keep that soil moist so that the water you do put in stays there. It doesn't run off anyway, you know. And good feed it, you know, when you first sow with something like bloodfish and bone meal, or you can later on give a seaweed extract feed or a liquid feed a couple of times. I tend to only feed when I sow, and then I won't feed again until I just start seeing a little bit of yellow. You know, sometimes you can look at the leaves and you can just see they've gone from that vibrant dark green and they start to turn that little pale yellow come into them. That's when I start giving the seaweed feed, and I'll just give maybe 1 or 2 feeds throughout the growing season, and that's usually enough.
Awesome.
If you're getting blight, yeah, you don't want to wait for it thinking you're going to grow your tubers. Just cut off all the homes straight at soil level and leave the potatoes in the soil for a couple of weeks just to harden the skins off. Then you can lift them. But don't think, oh, well, I'll just cut some of the tops off. You're never going to beat it at that point. If you get blight, you need to get rid of that top growth.
Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and start wrapping up there. We've had a really fun time discussing with Jay, David, and Tony about growing potatoes from all different types of aspects. Although me and Dave share the same, I would say we share the same state, but we don't share the same growing climates. We all have our own experiences with growing potatoes. And it's been a very fun time with all of you guys here on the live stream. So I want to thank every single one of you guys for joining with us and sharing your experience and knowledge on this topic. Hopefully we could do this again. And thank you for everyone on the chat for their tributes and everyone in their channel. So make sure to go check everyone out. Everything you need to know will be in the description box below. Make sure to go follow everyone at their channels, because we have a whole bunch of gardening knowledge here. It's a huge community of great gardeners. So thank you all so much for joining with us on this week's live stream. We have another live stream next week, I believe December 3rd, with Nick Rust from Rusty Exotics. We'll be talking everything about growing orchids. So make sure to go check out that live stream there, which I'm really, really excited about. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining with us on this live stream, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Al.